Kia ora everybody, hello and welcome to this video about the astrology of the week beginning 24th of November, Monday 2025, and looking to the following week. First of all, I'm going to talk about the moon phase, the stage of the lunar month that we're in at the moment as the week begins and as the week ends, and then go through the major transits and aspects one by one and talk a little bit about how they will be affecting the energies around us so that you've got some guidance as to how to deal with things as they come, and you've got a little bit of an idea about how long they're going to last as well. We're still in Mercury retrograde, so there's still this pressure to fix up mistakes. Errors are going to still appear. We still need to be careful with our messages and our analysis. But for the major point I'm going to talk about in this video with the all signs breakdown, I'm going to talk about Saturn turning direct. It's just reached the end of its retrograde period in the sign of Pisces, and it's going to be moving forward through the last degrees of Pisces and then beginning of next year into Aries and beyond. It's all part of a really big important lineup, and I'll be talking about that for the all signs breakdown. To introduce myself, my name is Fiona of Sun and Moon Calendar, and I make astrology calendars using lunar months for Australia and New Zealand. Here are the 2025 copies. The Aotearoa one is at the printer. The Australia one is just about to go there. Here's the Australia one. So they use lunar months. They use local birds and animals. So in Australia, it's Australia birds and animals. And in New Zealand, it's New Zealand birds and a few animals. We don't have as many of those to represent the signs, and it lists aspects and transits. There's a lot of noise in the background because there's roadworks going outside on the street, not very far away from where I'm recording this, but hopefully you can hear me all right. So let's get into the video. So I'm going to start from the phase of the lunar month that we're currently in, but if you want to miss any parts, you can look at the timestamps and jump ahead to the sections that you want to listen to first or second, whatever order you want, just see the timestamps. Okay. The lunar phase that we're in. Last week on Thursday, the 20th of November, we had a new moon in the evening in Australia and New Zealand at 28 degrees Scorpio, and that was, as I talked about in my video last week, a powerful new moon with Mercury exactly conjunct the sun and the moon, adding at the center point of its retrograde, adding potency, power. Uranus opposite, possibly some uncomfortable, shocking message, but maybe some great insight coming out of that lineup as well, because there was also support from Neptune and Saturn and Jupiter. You can go to last week's video if you want to review and see how that lined up with what you experienced during the week. Okay, and then we had the new moon in Scorpio and then we're heading towards the first quarter moon on Friday the 28th of November. That is when the sun and moon are square to each other. The moon is growing, and this is the halfway point of its waxing phase. Okay, as the moon is growing, you can imagine if you sowed some seeds at new moon, those are starting to sprout, and at the time of the first quarter moon, the sun is square the moon. We can feel some stress and tension that drives us to get on with our to-do list, and it's useful to have that kind of stress and tension because it gets us into action. Then we'll have the full moon on Friday the 5th of December, a full moon in Gemini, neat, last quarter moon, and then we'll have the next new moon, the beginning of the next lunar month on Saturday the 20th of December, just before the summer solstice or the winter solstice if you were in the northern hemisphere. So that's the stage of the moon phase that we're in. Okay, let's get into this week's aspects and transits starting from Monday. The sun recently moved into Sagittarius, comes into a sextile aspect with Pluto. Pluto is about the underworld, and of course the sun is about the overworld where everything is lit up. The sun is what lights it up, gives us clear vision of so much, but there's a whole underworld, deep hidden layers, and these can be one's psychological layers. It can also be about hidden wealth, hidden power movements, and motivations that we aren't always aware of. And this can be talking large scale amongst large groups of people, or it can be within one's own psychology. With the sextile aspect, that can be supportive and make things easier, and perhaps this can be the sun shining a light on some of those hidden layers of meaning and motivation and powerful forces, and helping us to see them and be able to express them positively and perhaps understand them more. That lasts 1 or 2 days around about Monday. Okay. On Tuesday, Mercury is conjunct Venus. Okay, so Mercury and Venus, we've got the sun, and Mercury and Venus are going in front of the sun, trailing behind the sun, leading ahead with the sun, and at the moment they are just behind the sun. All right, so Mercury has recently moved to be a morning star, except we won't see it yet until it's further away from the sun. It's probably still too close to the sun. But once Mercury retrograde is over, you should be able to see it in the sky, and Venus is probably getting too close to the sun to see in the sky as well. Anyway, I digress. Mercury retrograde conjunct Venus. Venus is about partnership, our finances, the sweet luxuries of life, what we enjoy and we find pleasurable, with sensory enjoyment, like tangible things that are comfortable and lovely. And Mercury is about our left brain thinking, our sense of logic, communication and messaging. So this is a really nice to bring these together, because one is about sort of the physical side of life and resources and tangible assets and things, whereas Mercury is about talking and thinking. So it's a good chance to think about partnership and to talk with your partner. Maybe this could be a business partner, could be anyone that you are working with or doing things with on a one-to-one basis. A great one for communicating love, talking about finances, planning your finances. It's a good idea not to make any big commitments or anything at the moment while Mercury is retrograde, but it's a chance to review some of those things. And that lasts for 1 or 2 days on the Tuesday, the 25th. And then we've got Venus. Venus is coming into trigger off and set off that grand water trine that I've been talking about, the lovely flowing energy between Jupiter in Cancer, Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, and the personal planets that have been going through Scorpio. We've had Mercury lining up with this grand trine. We've had Mars lining up with this grand trine. Mercury is going back to do it again with its retrograde. And now Venus is coming through. Actually, we've also had the sun as well. Venus is lining up with Jupiter. This is one of the most lovely aspects in astrology, I do believe. Venus with its sweet connection, willingness to enjoy pleasure and to create harmony. And Jupiter with its optimism, expansiveness, a sense that you can reach out of all your boundaries in the world and reach beyond them, and you're supported with generosity and benevolence, and they are trying to each other an aspect of ease and flow. It might be a nice day to have a date, to do something lovely with the people that you care about, to do something lovely that you really, really enjoy, whether that's with others or with yourself. But with the Venus there, it is a good one for partnership. Enjoy comfort, enjoy pleasure. Don't go overboard. Mostly I think this will be not too bad in terms of going overboard though. So that is on Thursday the 27th of November. And then we've got on the same day, the very same day, and this is so cool because this is really exact manifestation of the grand trine. Venus is also conjunct Saturn. Saturn and Jupiter are so close into their trine at the moment. It's not quite exact until next year, and they will be separating, but they're very close at the moment. So we've got Venus about tangible resources and comforts and pleasures, Saturn about doing things seriously and working hard for the long term, and Jupiter luck and opportunity and expansiveness and confidence and optimism. These are so beautifully connected, and as I talked about, there can be a lot of pleasure and comfort and just really enjoying something with the Venus Jupiter. But with Saturn there as well, there's an opportunity to build things for the long term and to do it in a really well structured way. So all the best for that. It only lasts 1 or 2 days, but that is really cool. Okay. And then we have Saturn stationing direct, and that is on Friday, the 28th of November. Saturn has been going backwards, going in retrograde. It started in Aries in July, and then it went back into Pisces 2 or 3 months ago. I did a video about that. And then it's been grinding backwards slowly through the final degrees of Pisces, and it reaches 25 degrees and 9 minutes of Pisces, and then it's going to station and be very still for a little while, a few weeks, and then slowly go forward and build up speed again and work its way into Aries. And then next year in February, it's going to be in a conjunction with Neptune, which is a great and grand new start in our lives. So more about that in the All Signs breakdown. But what did I write here? So there are the dates. Saturn went into Pisces in March of 2023, and it was there until May of this year. And then it was in Aries. It moved into Aries. It had a little bit of time between May and September in Aries. And it's been back in Pisces since September, and then in February it will move into Aries again for the next 2 or 3 years. Okay, Saturn in Pisces has brought to the world in general water challenges, compassion fatigue, mental health issues, or bringing them out, maybe showing what was already there, calling us out on some of our sometimes where we're trying to be spiritual and it's not very real. Saturn expects things to be real and grounded, calling us out where we're becoming ungrounded. Whatever is the Saturn, this Pisces, whatever is the Pisces area of your chart has had Saturn just come back in since September and make you get real again in that area. So I'll be talking about that in the All Signs breakdown. Okay. Then also on Friday the 28th, the moon squared the sun with the first quarter moon. Time to get going with your to-do list for the lunar month. And then Mercury retrograde finishes on Sunday the 30th of November. So we've been going through Mercury retrograde since I think it was the 10th. Oh yeah, the 10th of November. It's right there. And Mercury reaches, going backwards, slowly grinding again, because the retrograde is a little bit grindy and slow, back to 20 degrees 42 minutes of Scorpio, and there it is going to station. It'll be slow. It'll be drilling down on that point, 2042 of Scorpio, and then it's going to turn around and go forward. And here is a reminder of the dates. Back on the 21st, 22nd of October, Mercury went into that shadow area, and it was going forwards then, but things may have come up that you had to redo later. On the 30th of October, Mercury went into Sagittarius, it was in Scorpio, it went into Sagittarius. Then on the 10th of November, Mercury went retrograde. On the day of the new moon, the 20th of November, we had Mercury Cazimi, where it was going backwards and conjunct the sun and the moon. The day before that new moon, I've got those round the wrong way, Mercury retrograded back into Scorpio, and then on the 30th of November, Mercury goes direct, so the end of this week. And then on the 12th of December, Mercury goes back into Sagittarius, moving forward, building up speed again, and the end of the post-shadow, that will be on the 17th of December, and then that will be done, Mercury retrograde. But really it's pretty much done around about the 30th. You can start making plans with more certainty after that, and just slowly build up to it. Things will get sorted out, and it won't be just like problem after problem after problem in the same way. I've had quite a few things show up with the Mercury retrograde, and people around me, of course, things that needed to be sorted out. There was some errors with the calendar because, it's something to do with Mercury retrograde, lots of communication, writing, any kind of information and data. You need to check it so much when you're in Mercury retrograde and building up to it. And then also on the 30th of November, we have that Uranus opposition activated again by Venus coming into opposition with Uranus. This could definitely be bringing up some questions, some disruptions, and some surprises and different ideas, unconventional ideas about relationships and finances. So good luck with that. It will only last a couple of days. All right. And then Venus goes into trine with Neptune. This is another absolutely lovely aspect on that same day. So there's the opposition with Uranus, which is uncomfortable. We've got Mercury going direct, but also this very sweet, kind of loving, flowing, watery energy. If you're around water, that could be a really lovely thing. There could be some real pleasure with the water and the energy around that water, and people enjoying being in that watery vibe, feeling really connected and sweet and loving. Yeah, so that one's a nice one. Are there any more on the 30th? No, that is all. So that is it for the week, the aspects and transits. And now I will go into talking a bit more about Saturn. So Saturn in the sign of Pisces, it's been there since 2023. And as I said, the Pisces part of your chart has had to go through a really serious run. There's had to be some growing up, I'm sure. I am Pisces rising, and I feel like I've grown up so much in the last 3 years with Saturn there, and I feel even a bit boring now, and I definitely feel older, and that is what Saturn can do. It can make us, it's about restriction and contraction, and it's also about old age. So whether you are 5 years old or 50 years old or 100 years old, Saturn going through your first house would make you feel older. Okay, but for any part of your chart that Saturn is in, it can really make you have to, in a hard way, face up to reality and be real, and not be overly optimistic, not be overindulging in dreams and fantasies and thinking, oh, it'll be all right. No, Saturn makes you face up to what's going on in a real way, be grounded, and have to make hard decisions where you have to say yes to some couple of things. Maybe you wanted to do 10 things and you can only say yes to 1 or 2 things, for example. You have to say no with Saturn. It gives us the restrictions and the boundaries of life. And it's very much, I think, a planet of being real about the fact that we are beings living on Earth, and we're restricted by the limitations of being so. So we've got bodies that can only live for so long and can only do so much. We have time, and Saturn is known as a lord of time. Time, like, we don't have unlimited time in the day. We can't do everything. We don't have unlimited time in the weekend when we want to maybe have a lot of fun. It comes to an end, and we can only do very few things, really. So That's one of the ways that Saturn's really made me grow up. It is about being real and being realistic. I expect that when Saturn goes out of my sign, I'll get a little bit more vague and lazy and less, by lazy, I don't mean lazy, like I do work hard, but I can be like lazy about facing up to the truth of what I can do and what I can't do. And so I'm sure I'll get a little bit more like that again once Saturn moves out of my sign, but then of course it will move into another part of my chart, and that is the same for you. So wherever Saturn has been in Pisces, that'll be part of your chart that I'm going to talk about in this all signs breakdown. But I'm also going to talk briefly about, just before I get into the all signs breakdown, Saturn and its part in this whole mini-trine story. So Saturn has been very close to Neptune for quite a while. Neptune's been in Pisces for 14 years. And then this year, around the beginning and the middle of the year, Saturn and Neptune both moved into Aries, okay? And they didn't become conjunct, but they became very close to that. And Neptune can really be about idealism and great compassion and quests for spiritual enlightenment, charity, and things to do with water and spiritual connection and connecting with the universe and creativity. And Saturn and Neptune can help to make some of those idealistic ideas and dreams and fantasies and stories and visualizations and spiritual beliefs, spiritual feelings and the sense of divinity, make it be quite grounded. So this is a really amazing combination, Saturn and Neptune. They're kind of opposites, but if they work well together, it can bring wonderful creativity and unconditional love and spirituality into the earthly world, onto earth, like make it something that we can really work with on earth. Okay, so that's going to be that Saturn Neptune conjunction that's happening exactly on the 21st of February next year. Saturn moving forward is part of that journey towards that, and Neptune will be stationing direct soon as well, and that will be moving forward, and then they're both going to go in Aries and then meet up at that 0 degrees of Aries point. It's very exciting. And at the same time, they are sextile to Uranus in late Taurus and early Gemini, and sextile to Pluto in early Aquarius, and that's a mini grand trine I've been talking about, bringing great developments, changes, enormous shifts and transformations, especially with technology and communication and spiritual practice, I believe, in the world. Okay, so now I'm going to get into the all signs breakdown. I hope that some of that made sense. So I'm going to start from Pisces, Sun, Moon or Rising, because this is happening in your sign, Pisces. As I said, I'm a Pisces too. Saturn will station direct at 25 degrees of Pisces, and then it will be going forwards. This is your first house, and over the last 3 years, since March 2023, you've had Pisces, Saturn in your first house, and that has been bringing restrictions to your body, perhaps restricting how much fun you have with your body, like maybe not doing as much active stuff like sport and everything, and maybe finding that your body is not able to do things that it used to be able to do. I really feel like I've got stiffer in the last 3 years. On the other hand, you had a little bit of a break from that while Saturn was in the sign of Aries, and that was between May and September this year, but then it went back into Pisces. And you may have noticed that some themes that made you have to really be serious and grown up about who you are in the world, your identity in the world, how you present yourself in the world, kind of like how the world sees you and how you see the world, and every aspect of your life. You've taken a more serious turn while Saturn has been in that first house, more sensible, more restricted, more realizing that you cannot escape reality and you just have to work with reality. And I expect, I'm not sure, but I expect that that will have brought some pain, some discomfort in terms of like, oh my gosh, I feel so restricted. Why can't I do things the way I want to do? Why can't I do more? Why can't I go further? Why can't I just feel the optimism and the confidence and the joie de vivre that I used to feel? That will come back. Maybe some of the things won't come back because we have grown older, and when Saturn is in our first house, that aging process is accelerated, whatever age you are. Okay, but I hope you have found that the realism and the wisdom of that grounded realism has been beneficial to you. I think it has been good for me, and I will look back on it probably more fondly, but it can be hard to go through it at the time. Saturn will move into our second house in February, into Aries. That's our second house of our finances, our resources, our sense of self-worth, and how the material resources and our earnings and all that reflect our sense of self-worth. So that's not going to be easy either. It's a lot more about being realistic about our money. So that's also a hard one. But Saturn is hard wherever it goes in the chart, and there is going to be a bit of release with Saturn moving out of our first house. So all the best for that, Pisces. Please like, comment or subscribe if you like this video, and go to Sun and Moon calendar for your Australia or your Aotearoa copy of the Sun and Moon calendar for 2026. It's got so much information in it that I'm sure you'll find useful on a daily basis, because it's got information almost every day of the year. Okay, so all the best for it, Pisces. Soon, or Neptune will be going out of our house, and we've had lots of creativity and flow with Neptune in our first house. Neptune will be going into Aries, but we naturally got Neptune in us anyway. It's our ruler, and after Saturn moves out, we can probably enjoy being more flowy and dreamy and creative again, and getting away with it a bit more. So bye for now, Pisces. If you are Aries, Sun, Moon or Rising, but especially Aries Rising, Saturn is turning direct in your 12th house, and it went back into your 12th house of Pisces in September, and it was in your first house from May to September. So I'll talk about that in a little minute. But you've had since March 2023 until halfway through this year, until May this year, and then again from September, Saturn going through your 12th house, bringing restrictions and realism and boundaries and wisdom, wisdom to your 12th house of your connections to spirit, to divinity, your connections to far off distant places. So it could be like travel to far off countries. It can be about the ways that you escape from the world. So watching TV, reading stories in general, like imagination and fantasy, creativity that's imaginative and even a bit fantastical. Fantasy novels and fantasy movies definitely fall under the 12th house kind of energy, Pisces energy. And also about the 12th house can be about places that you go to retreat from the world, where the rest of the world doesn't really know what you get up to. And this could be a little bit of a private life that you've got that the rest of the world doesn't know about. It can be things that you do for comfort, like self-medicating in a way, like addictions can come under the 12th house, but it can even be just places where you're going to hospitals or care homes and you're way away from the world, SPCA, stuff like that. Okay, so Saturn's been making you face up to some reality in these areas, and it could have been that you sorted out an addiction, or you're working on sorting out an addiction, or just some over escapism, whether that's workaholism, something that can kind of seem a bit harmless, but it's maybe doing you a little bit of harm. Saturn might have made you face up to that in this time. When Saturn moves into Aries, okay, so that will be from February, okay, and you had a taste of it from May until September this year. That is your first house, Aries, okay, and your first house is about who you are in your world, your identity, how you present to the world, and how the world sees you. And that means that Saturn in your first house, the world is seeing you as being, and you are being, more serious, more restricted and more restrictive, more authoritarian even, having more wisdom, but having also some hard stuff of having to face up to realism and limitations, the limitations of your body and the limitations of your identity. Okay, so Aries, you love setting out on new ventures. You love fighting, actually fighting for good, I hope, but fighting in a way where you stand up for what you believe in. You like to say things in direct ways. You like to call a spade and just see things as they are and say it. Be direct, be bold, and step off into new initiatives. And Saturn might restrict that in your first house and make you be more realistic about consequences and about limitations on that. But so you've got a little bit more of Saturn and Pisces to sort out that 12th house. And so that's all for Aries. But unless I think of something else, please go to Aotearoa Sun and Moon Calendar, to sunandmooncalendar.com for your Australia or your Aotearoa edition of the 2026 calendar to get it before next year. And all the best, Aries. I think you will do well with Saturn in your house, because I think that something that's good about Aries is you can face things head on. Saturn will be staring at you, well, it will be in you, and facing that realism in a head-on way might be helpful for you. If you are Taurus, Sun, Moon or Rising, but especially Taurus Rising, Saturn is stationing direct in Pisces, 25 degrees of Pisces. That is your 11th house. This is a house of groups of friends and organizations or networks of people that you belong to by choice. So not so much neighborhoods or families, but more about where you've got something in common with that group of people. It could even be a work organization, or it could be people who are joined together for some sort of cause, or it could be a friendship network. The 11th house is also about long-term goals and what you're aiming for in life over the long term. And it's also about the rewards that you get from your work, and that can be like your salary. So Saturn is bringing some kind of restriction, or it has brought, Saturn has been restricting that part of your life since 2023, since March of 2023. And it was carrying on through that until May this year, bringing you having to face up to being realistic, maybe about your long-term goals, realistic about the true nature of some friendship groups or organizations of people you belong to, and being realistic about what you get out of your career and the rewards of your career. And you've had to be grounded and accept limitations in those areas. Okay, and that will end in February. It's having a last little time now, and then in February it will go into your 12th house. Saturn in your 12th house. So the 12th house, Aries for you, Taurus. The 12th house is Aries for you. The 12th house is about the ways that you retreat from the world. It's known as a house of self-undoing, where you kind of come undone from your life, you could say. In the 12th house, you're not out in the world doing things. You're kind of hidden away from the world. It could be places of retreat that you go to, like whether that actually is a retreat, or it could be where you seek sanctuary at home and you're escaping from reality. You're maybe scrolling on Instagram or you're watching Netflix, you're getting away from things. It can also be addictions, because that's where we do escapism in maybe a detrimental way. Any kind of addiction, it doesn't have to be a real serious one. The 12th house can also be about places people go where they're kind of hidden from the world, like retreats, also hospice or care homes. Okay, so Saturn, the 12th house can also be about where we get in touch with the universe, our spiritual connection, where we sense the divine in everything around us. That can be the beautiful and the creative side of the 12th house. So Saturn's will be restricting that 12th house, and you had a taste of it from May to September, and then you're going to be experiencing that again from February next year. So some kind of restriction, facing up to reality. It could be that you face up to ways that you're escaping from the world too much, like going too far, like maybe overdoing addictions, or maybe spending too much time even in meditation or trying to connect to divinity and actually not facing up to eating properly or sleeping properly, things like that. Okay, so all the best for that, Taurus. Please go to sunandmooncalendar.com to order your Aotearoa or your Australia edition of the calendar for 2026, and please like, comment or subscribe if you like this video. And I will just I'm dropping those. Taurus, I will just add that you have a lot of patience, and I think that that will help with dealing with Saturn in any part of your chart. And you know, after 2029, it's going to be coming into your first house. Your patience and your groundedness will help with any Saturn transit that you have. So all the best, Taurus. If you are Gemini, sun, moon or rising, but especially Gemini rising, Saturn is stationing direct at 25 degrees of Pisces, and that is your 10th house. So since March this year, since March 2023, Saturn was going through your 10th house of your career, your status in the world, your reputation, and things that you're working for in order to leave a legacy behind. So like in some ways your life's work, where it's a career and you have a reputation for it. So it might not even be work that you're paid for, but it's something that you're known for. Saturn's been restricting that area, and it's going to just have this last bit of work to do as it goes forward through Pisces, those final 5 degrees. And then when it goes into Aries in February next year, and then for the next few years until 2026, it's going to be bringing its realism, its groundedness, its wisdom, and it's facing up to the boundaries and restrictions of reality in your 11th house. And that is the house of groups of people and networks that you belong to, not your family, not so much your neighborhood, more the groups of people that you choose to belong to because of the type of person that you are. Like so the work that you do, it could be a work organization, or it can be groups of friends or people, networks that you belong to because you have something in common that you believe in. Okay, so some kinds of restrictions and realism there, and it could be that you realize these people aren't really for me. I thought they were really cool, but now I realize, gosh, they're a bit nuts, they're a bit crazy, or they're a bit away with the fairies, or I don't like the way they behave, or they don't want you because of some things. You know, Saturn can bring endings and the boundaries, the end of things, and you'll have to accept that and move on and basically restructure your friendship groups, restructure your rewards from work, because the 11th house is also about rewards from work, like your salary, and also about long-term goals. So there's a restructuring required, and accepting that you can't have everything, and being very realistic, and sometimes it's hard finding that out. So all the best for that, Gemini. Please like, comment or subscribe if you like this video, and go to sunandmooncalendar.com to order your Australia or your Aotearoa edition of the Sun and Moon calendar for 2026. And Gemini, what can I say about you and how this might be for you? Well, Gemini, you are logical because you are ruled by Mercury. Mercury is logical. It deals with rational thought, and Saturn would like that logic, okay? And so I think that that logical side of you that can see the facts and recognize them and learn from them will work well with Saturn being a great master teacher in your 10th house of career for a last little bit, and then your 11th house of your groups of friends, networks, and long-term goals and rewards from your work. All the best, Gemini. If you are Cancer, Sun, Moon or Rising, but especially Cancer Rising, Saturn has stationed direct in your 9th house, okay? 25 degrees of Pisces, that's your 9th house of far distance, distant travel, like traveling off overseas, also about where you explore life's philosophies and your beliefs about life and how you organize your beliefs, so religion or philosophy and belief systems of some kind, and also higher learning like university learning. So Saturn has been in that house bringing restrictions and realism to that house since March of 2023. It went until May, and then you had a little bit of time of a taste of Saturn in your 10th house. And now it's back in that 9th house. It's turning direct, and it's got a final job to do in that 9th house of your foreign travel, exploration of higher ideals and principles and religion or beliefs, and higher learning. Okay, so some final job where you have to be realistic, accept restrictions, feel like more of an adult and a grown-up and a wise elder in that area. And then once Saturn is in your 10th house, which you've had a taste of, that is going to be about restrictions and realism in your career. Okay, so Saturn is likely to bring endings. It's likely to bring hard boundaries and truths about what you can do and what you can't do. But it's fantastic for building for the future. Okay, so take that away. And you're quite familiar with Saturn because your Saturn rules the house of your partner. Capricorn is your house of partnership, and so it could be coming from your partner that some of this realism comes from, and this restriction. Okay, so Cancer, I will think of a little bit more about you, but just to say, please like, comment or subscribe if you like this video, and go to the sunandmooncalendar.com to order your New Zealand Aotearoa or your Australia Sun and Moon calendar for 2026. And Cancer, let's think about you and how you deal with things. You've got so many emotions, you've got nurturing and intuition. And I hope that through this time where it's hard, wherever you have Saturn, it's going to be hard, of course. That's for everybody. But you can do a good job of nurturing yourself through some of the challenging parts. And where you know of other people who are having heavy Saturn transits, and when Saturn is turning around, that stationing direct and turning to go direct, that can be a hard point because it drills down on that point, and you can be looking out for people to nurture and support emotionally through that. Okay, there we go, Cancer. If you are Leo, Sun, Moon or Rising, but especially Leo Rising, Saturn is stationing direct in your 8th house. It's in Pisces at 25 degrees of Pisces, drilling down on that point in your 8th house, bringing you to do one final job in there. And you've had it in the 8th house since March of 2023. You had a break through the middle of the year, but it's back there. as it has been since September, and it's going to be going forward to finish off things, okay? Your 8th house is about your partner's money, your partner's resources, or shared resources you have with your partner. It's about investments, taxes, inheritances, other people's money in your life, okay? And it's usually large amounts of money that you don't have easy access to, retirement savings, but there has been some kind of restriction in that area. And also, actually, the 8th house is also about occult matters, whether that is past life regressions or tarot, even astrology. And it's also about our psychological underlying layers. And it could be that Saturn has been bringing up the need to be realistic and grounded and face facts in a hard way in those areas. And so perhaps you used to be quite optimistic and expansive. You're ruled by the sun, Leo. You're optimistic and you like to shine out confidently and generously in the world, but maybe you've had to realize you can't be quite so generous with thinking about your future money, not quite so optimistic. Saturn has made you grow up in some ways and realize that. And you've had a bit of a taste this year of Saturn going into your 9th house while it was in Aries. And then from February, it's going to be in that sign of Aries for the next few years. And your 9th house will have that its turn with Saturn to be realistic and to have to just develop sobriety and accept restrictions. Your 9th house is a lucky house, actually, and it so some of your feeling of optimism and luck might feel a bit restricted while Saturn is there. The 9th house is about foreign travel and going off exploring to far distant places and exploring the expansiveness of the mind as well, because it's about philosophy and beliefs and thinking about things like expanding the horizons of your physical reality or the horizons of your mind with higher learning and thinking about higher beliefs and ideals. And Saturn will be bringing restrictions, perhaps making you realize, oh, I don't know if I really believe that anymore, and that changes a whole lot about what I'm aiming for in my life. Or you can't travel because of some restriction on travel for whatever reason. Okay, but you'll do all right. You just got to get through it, Leo, and it's not too bad having Saturn in the 9th house. It'll be fine. So I'll think of something else to say for you, Leo, but in the meantime, please like, comment, or subscribe if you like this video. Go to sunandmooncalendar.com to order your Australia or your New Zealand Aotearoa Sun and Moon calendar for 2026. And let me think what else I can say for you, Leo. Leo, you're ruled by the sun, and as such, you are at the center of the solar system. You shine so brightly, and people are attracted to your charisma and that vitality and brightness that you've got. In traditional astrology, Saturn is the furthest out planet. It's the coldest. It's the furthest away in terms of the planets that we can actually see with the naked eye without a telescope. So in some ways, Saturn and your ruler, the sun, are as far away as any planets can get from each other using traditional astrology. So there is some discomfort with you and Saturn. Saturn rules your 6th house, and that's Capricorn. It's your 6th house of how you give service and do work, and it also rules your 7th house, Aquarius. So some of that restriction might come from your partner, because that is the 7th house of partnership. Okay, so it might be your partner that's representing some of that seriousness or restriction, or bringing those thoughts into those areas. But you'll be fine. You've got all that vitality and energy, Leo, and you will shine through it all. And Saturn's always somewhere in your chart. All the best, Leo. If you are Virgo, sun, moon or rising, but especially Virgo rising, Saturn is stationing to go direct at 25 degrees of Pisces, the sign of your partner and partnership. It's going to be going forward through the final degrees, the last 5 degrees of Pisces, to finish one final job in something to do with partnership. Okay, so the last 3 years since March 2023, there's been restriction in partnership. There's been a focus on it even, but it's been about restriction, boundaries, growing up in something to do with your partner, maybe to do with your partnership, or your partner themselves has been restricted in some way, something that stopped your partner, or your partner has been bringing this restrictive energy towards you. Okay, that's been coming from your partner. Okay, and it's coming to an end, and it'll be interesting to see what happens for you with your partnerships after it leaves that 7th house of partnership. Okay, and that is happening in February in 2026, so February next year. You had a bit of a taste of it through the middle of this year, from May to September, with Saturn moving into your 8th house, and this is a house of your partner's money, or shared resources with your partner, or shared resources with others. And this can be like retirement savings, investments, taxes, inheritances, large amounts of money that are with other people. They might come to you, or you might benefit from them, but you don't have really access to them. The 8th house is also about occult mysteries and our deep underlying psychological layers. It can even be about intimacy and underlying power and how that plays out in partnership. So the 8th house does have to do with partnership still. Saturn is going to be bringing restriction and realism, boundaries and hard truths to your awareness in this area. And it could be something where there's restrictions with money and you need to really work to rebuild and restructure your investments. It could be something to do with occult mysteries. Maybe you've been delving deep into some occult things, like using fortune telling and divination techniques, and you find that you can't do it. Maybe you're living somewhere where people don't approve of that and you kind of have to hide away. It could be any kind of restriction like that. But it'll be fine, because Saturn will be the chance to restructure things and rebuild and build for things for the long term. So those are good things to think about, Virgo. And I'll have a little bit more to say, but I just want to say, please go to sunandmooncalendar.com to order your 2026 Aotearoa New Zealand or your Australia edition of the 2026 calendar. And please like, comment or subscribe if you like this video. And what else can I say, Virgo? You are an earth sign, and you do like to do things in quite a methodical way. You like to organize things and make things work in a really good system, and that can go really well with Saturn. And so I think that wherever Saturn is, you will be having quite an okay time there, because you quite like the practicality of it. So all the best for that, Virgo. If you are Libra, sun, moon or rising, but especially Libra rising, Saturn is stationing direct at 25 degrees of Pisces. That is in your 6th house. That is the house where you give service, a house where it is your daily work and your daily routines for daily life, where you go and do your work and you give service to the world, and how you organize your daily life, your daily routines for health, like good nutrition and brushing your teeth and all of that, your exercise, and how you keep your home, and life admin, how you keep things organized. And so Saturn's been bringing some restriction there over the last few years since March of 2023. It could be that there's been illness come up, because this is a house to do with health. It could be that there's been restrictions and problems and uncomfortable, hard realities to face up to in your daily life of work and even how you organize your life. And you may have had to get much more organized, and you don't love it, but you've had to do it. Okay, you had a break from that between May and September this year, but shortly you had a break from that from May to September while Saturn went into Aries, but it came back into that house of giving service and daily work in September, and now it's turned direct, Saturn has, and it's got like one last job to do in that area, something final to sort out. And remember, Saturn is about building for the future and building for long-term goals. So it could be a chance to think about that and think about what do you want for the future of your work and your daily organization. And then from February next year until 2026, Saturn will be in your house of partnership. Okay, and you had a taste of this from May to September this year. The house of your partner, it could be restrictions for your partner. It could be that your partner is bringing a restricting influence on you, or it could be that your partnership itself, the relationship, has some kind of restriction, boundary, distance even, and it's about facing up to hard realities. Okay, and this can be a business partner, it can be client relationships, anything where it's a one-to-one relationship, but perhaps especially relationships with a life partner or an intimate partner. So all the best for that, Libra. I'll have something else to say in a minute, but please go to Sun and Moon Calendar to order your Australia or your Aotearoa New Zealand copy of the 2026 calendar, and please like, comment or subscribe if you like this video. So what can I say? Libra, you're an air sign. You've got some rationality. Okay, you like things that you like. You don't mind facts and figures, and you don't mind talking through things and working things out. In fact, you love that. That's what you're best at. It's your superpower, the power to be diplomatic and to negotiate, and that's going to help you when there are challenges with your partnership, with Saturn going through there. So all the best, Libra. If you are Scorpio, Sun, Moon or Rising, but especially Scorpio Rising, Saturn is turning direct in your 5th house of romance and the 5th house of your children and the house of your hobbies and entrepreneurial projects. Okay, so Pisces is your 5th house. Saturn is going to be doing one final job as it goes direct through that final part of your 5th house. You've had 3 years roughly, not quite, since March 2023, Saturn's been going through that 5th house. The 5th house is about fun and playfulness and laughter and childlike joy and joie de vivre. And Saturn going through your 5th house might have meant that there hasn't been as much feeling with fun. Maybe your children haven't been as playful and bright. Maybe romance hasn't been happening in a fun and sweetly romantic way. And maybe there's been restrictions on your hobbies and any ways that you like to enjoy yourself for just the pure fun of it in the world. It also might have meant that during that time you've been rebuilding or structuring something for the future in your 5th house, maybe sorting some big things out for your children, or sorting some things out, changing some things about the ways that you do dating. Okay, so Saturn can bring just those hard restrictions and hard realities that we have to knock up against and then change the way that we're doing things and be more grown up and realistic about it. Okay, so from February next year, Saturn will be going through your 6th house. Okay, moving into Aries, which is your 6th, and you had a taste of this from May to September this year. In your 6th house, Saturn is going to be bringing restriction and reality to the ways that you give service in the world, the ways that you give practical help in the world. Okay, that is the 6th house, which is Aries for you. Okay, and the sixth house is also about daily routines for health and organization, life admin, the ways that you organize your life so that things run smoothly on a day-to-day basis, and that practical giving service in the world, your daily work. So there will be restrictions and boundaries coming up in that area. Maybe you'll be working with somebody that has got that very hard, serious energy about them, but it could be very good because it's a chance to rebuild things and to do things in a more adult way that actually work better in the long term. So Scorpio, I have something else to say about you, but first of all, please like, comment or subscribe if you like this video, and go to sunandmooncalendar.com to order your 2026 Aotearoa New Zealand or Australia edition of the Sun and Moon calendar for next year. Okay, Scorpio, what else can I say about you? Scorpio, here is a superpower of yours, which is to be very strategic. You guys have got strategy and you've got a lot of inner, deep, magnetic power. You don't mind playing the long game, and you do that strategically very well. Saturn is also about playing the long game. So wherever Saturn is in your chart, you're probably quite okay with some aspects of that. You do have this a lot of emotion and feelings, and Saturn might make that hard at times, but you do have that ability to be strategic, and that goes well with wherever Saturn is. So all the best, Scorpio. If you are Sagittarius, Sun, Moon or Rising, but especially Sagittarius Rising, Saturn is turning direct in Pisces at 25 degrees of Pisces. This is your fourth house. There's some final job to do between now and February in your fourth house of home and family, your family of origin, even your ancestry and family memories. But it could also be just the house where you live and the people that you live with, or properties that you own. So there's been restriction there over the last 3 years, since March 2023, 2.5 years roughly. Something where you've had to grow up and face reality and be more realistic and grounded and accept boundaries and restrictions. Okay, so that could be like the people that you live with have been very serious, and or you've had to really save money, or you've been working very hard on your home. You've maybe been saving for a long-term home to buy or something like that, and there's been this feeling of restriction, not able to just be free-flowing in that area. It's coming to an end. There's a final job to do between now and February. From February, Saturn will move into your fifth house, and you had a bit of a taste of this from May until September, and that is the house of fun and play and romance and your children, and also your hobbies and your creative projects and entrepreneurial projects, where you're putting what you love from your heart out into the world, whether that is in a romantic way by dating, whether that is that love and sweet joy that you have with your children, or whether it is the things that you love to be playful with, as in your hobbies. Saturn is going to bring restriction to that area. Maybe you're going to have to rethink the way that you do romance. Maybe you're going to have to say no to some time wasters in the romantic area, in the dating area. Maybe you're going to have to get much firmer with your children and set up some boundaries and for their behavior and the ways that they maybe get them doing their jobs around the house, and limit their screen time and give them healthy food. Something might come up that really throws that into the spotlight, where you actually have to grow up and be an adult and lead them in an adult way, and not just like giving in to their demands for more sugar, whatever it is. Okay, and or it could be where there's some kind of restriction on your hobbies, and something where you just can't enjoy them as much, or you just can't follow them and do them as much. It will be all right, Sagittarius. It's Saturn's always somewhere in the chart. So Sagittarius, please like, comment or subscribe if you like this video, and go to sunandmooncalendar.com to order your 2026 Aotearoa or your Australia Sun and Moon calendar. So all the best, Sagittarius. If you are Capricorn, Sun, Moon or Rising, but especially Capricorn Rising, Saturn is your ruler, Capricorn. It's going direct in your third house. Pisces is your third house, and it's been going through your third house since March of 2023, bringing some kind of restriction and realism and adulting to your neighborhood, to your connections with your neighbors and community, going around about the neighborhood, your local travel, but also that can be relations like aunties, uncles, cousins, not so much your parents or not so much your children or parents or grandparents. Also, the third house can be about your communication and social networking, like social media, and it can also be about trade and exchange and small businesses. So some kind of restriction and adulting there that was needed and has been needed, and there's a final job to do in that area between now and February when Saturn moves into your fourth house. Okay. However, Capricorn, you're ruled by Saturn, so I think you probably have been fairly comfortable with having to do this. This is how you go about in the world. You guys have got this mastery on the world in some ways. Like, you really recognize that we are all restricted by earthly reality, and you bring that wisdom to us. And sometimes we are complaining because you're saying, no, it's time to go home, party's over, it's 10 p.m. and it's a work day tomorrow. Or you're saying, no, stop eating that chocolate after one row of squares. So go on to have more. You're the ones who are saying, look, we're going to this party on Friday. We need to organize what we're going to bring, what dish are we going to cook, when are we going to cook it. You're the ones making us face up to the fact that things need to be organized and we need to think about the future. So that's pretty cool. You've got that, Capricorn, but nevertheless, you might have found that there have been restrictions in that third house of your neighborhood and your relations and your connections around the community. Perhaps you've been restricted with your transport, like you've had a car that's not really working or a bike that's not working very well, or you've been living somewhere where you don't have good connections with neighbors or community, or there's been some kind of restriction on your small business, or anything where it's this chatting, or also learning, like local learning or connections with schools, some kind of restriction or seriousness in those areas. That's coming to an end when Saturn moves into Aries in February, and you had a little bit of a taste of that between May and September. Saturn in Aries will be your fourth house, okay? So that's the house of your home, your family of origin, the place where you live, buildings that you own or properties that you own, or even the people that you live with. And it's a cardinal, it's an important sign. It's on the cardinal axis. So the fourth house is really important, and you might feel those restrictions there. It could be something like where you just don't have as much fun at home, like you need to be serious all the time. It might be that you need to set some house rules up and actually follow them, and the consequences of not following the rules and being an adult in the home could be more severe than they would normally be if Saturn wasn't there. But anyway, you'll get through. Capricorn, you're pretty comfortable with Saturn because it is your ruler, and all the best for that. So please like, comment or subscribe if you like this video, Capricorn, and go to sunandmooncalendar.com to order your Australia or your Aotearoa New Zealand edition of the 2026 calendar. And all the best, Capricorn. I do appreciate the mastery and the reality checks that you guys bring. The people who are Capricornian in my life, they bring me down in terms of facing reality and getting planned for the future. And you guys are great at that. If you are Aquarius, Sun, Moon or Rising, but especially Aquarius Rising, Saturn is stationing direct at 25 of Pisces. That is your second house of your income, your earnings, the money and resources that you have, the possessions that you own, and the sense of self-worth that all of those material things can somehow be symbolic of or represent. Okay, if that self-worth is strong, then those other things will be in good order. Saturn has been going through that second house since March of 2023, guiding you to get serious about sorting things out, maybe bringing up some crises that felt hard and you had to face up to hard reality and be realistic and grounded and behave like an adult. Now I say this, Aquarius, but you are ruled by Saturn. It is your ancient ruler. Uranus is the modern ruler, unconventional, out there, out of the box Uranus. But you've got that Saturnian side that is serious and rational and grounded in a way. Okay, and so Saturn is maybe quite a comfortable planet for you, and it might have not felt so bad having to face up to those realities, and anywhere Saturn is in your chart might feel actually quite fine, all right? But nevertheless, there could have been some hard truths to face up to, and restructuring and building up your set of possessions and looking at your budget and your earnings and being realistic and having to perhaps change some things to build for a better future. Okay, and there's a final job to do in that area between now and February. And then Saturn will move into Aries, which is your third house. And you had a taste of this between May and September this year. The third house is about your connections in the community, your neighborhood. It can be learning in the community. It can be local schools or education places around the neighborhoods, workshops and learning. It's also about communication, social networking, trade and exchange. It covers a lot of things, local transport and local travel. So there might be restrictions coming up for you in those areas where, again, you need to face hard reality. There might be just some contraction in that area. Maybe you're living somewhere where you don't have good connections with your neighbors, and there's that feeling of restriction and just like a lack thereof. Okay, it could be that there's problems with schools or education places around the neighborhood. This can also be about relations like cousins, aunties, uncles, those kind of relations, some kind of restriction, facing up to reality and eventually building something in a serious way that takes hard work and patience for the future. Okay, so all the best for that, Aries. Please like, comment or subscribe if you like this video, and go to sunandmooncalendar.com to order your 2026 Aotearoa New Zealand or Australia edition of the Sun and Moon calendar. So much information in there. And like I said, Aries, this might not feel so bad for you because you are ruled by Saturn, and you recognize that we need to be realistic. But you also have that real unconventional, quirky, out-of-the-box side of you that can bring some different ways of seeing things and help us to see things in an authentic way, even if they can be like kind of out there and less grounded. Very interesting. So all the best, Aquarius. So there we go, everyone. That is my video, but I'm just going to add to my general things that I've been saying about Saturn. As I said before, Saturn can be very much about earthly reality and facing up to the restrictions that our lives on earth bring. It's restrictions of our bodies, the restrictions of the need to eat, the restrictions of the length of our day and the restrictions of the length of our life. And Saturn is turning direct at the time of it being in this trine to Jupiter, and in some ways Saturn and Jupiter are like opposites. Saturn is like the no and Jupiter is like the yes, but when we bring those two together we get the yes and the expansiveness and the confidence and the idealism of Jupiter with the grounded realism of Saturn, and that can be so magic because then we can be bringing to earth in a way that will actually practically work some of those ideals of truth and fairness and justice and the expansive adventurous spirit of Jupiter. So that's really cool. This also of course goes along with Neptune, which is like in a way a higher octave of Jupiter, which is even more idealistic, even more about unconditional love and acceptance and connection to divinity and all that is. And Saturn and Neptune together, if we can bring that groundedness of wonderful spiritual practice, wonderful compassion and acceptance, unconditional acceptance in ways that are grounded in reality with Saturn, that'll be so awesome. So that's all I'm going to say for my video. So please like, comment or subscribe if you like this video and you want to help my channel to grow, and order your sun and moon calendar for 2026. Thanks everybody for listening, and thanks everyone who's made an order already. Bye for now.